Good morning and welcome to part 9 of Refuge Recovery by Levine, and we left off on page 43, and so we shall continue. Another perhaps more simple example is when we say something trying to be funny, but it offends someone who is listening. Let me back up a little bit. The intention of the addict is usually a selfish craving for pleasure or to escape pain. From the intention of self-serving, often fear-based and dishonest actions comes all the harm that the addict causes. So he or she is fully responsible for all the intentional actions that have resulted in harming others. Another perhaps more simple example is when we say something trying to be funny, but it offends someone who is listening. Or like, as I like to say, if you're laughing and I'm not laughing and the joke is on me, it's not funny. Perhaps you tell a racist joke or say any number of things that some might find funny while others only take offense. We are still fully responsible for our intentions. I'm going to repeat that. Perhaps we tell a racist joke or say any number of things that some might find funny while others only take offense. We are still fully responsible for our intentions. In humor, our intention may be a selfish motivation to get attention and some lack of mindfulness that what we are saying may offend someone. But this is not karma-free. We certainly do not intend to be kind. We certainly do not intend to be kind, generous, caring, or compassionate when we say mean things just because they might get a laugh. We are often intentionally being mean. The road to hell, and very often relapse, or perhaps relapse and then hell, is not paved with good intentions. Quite the opposite. If we bring mindfulness to our motivations and intentions, we will see more and more how we create suffering or end suffering. This is not to say that actions that come from wise and skillful intentions never cause harm. There are certainly cases where harm will arise from even totally wholesome intentions. For instance, when the enlightened Buddha began to teach that a higher power was not necessary for spiritual practice and awakening, many people were offended and very angry with him, as they may be with us. But the Buddha's intention was one of compassion and care. He only wanted to guide people on a truly transformative path. He saw all the delusions that religious people held and wanted to warn them that they were headed down a dead end. He spoke of wisdom, truth, and compassion. There are two levels of intention. The first is simply having the appropriate intention. This means training our mind in thoughts that are free from craving and ill will. It means trying to think about the welfare of all beings. This sort of intention may be as simple as paying attention to our motives and abstaining from actions that are motivated by greed, hatred, and delusion. For example, when we are angry and lashing out at someone, that is obviously an aversive reaction, an intentionally harmful act. As recovering addicts, we must be very careful about our intentions. We have lived lives of intentionally escaping pain and creating pleasure. The habitual pattern that we have set up is to indulge every craving that arises. As we abstain from the behaviors and substances of our addictions, the intention to avoid pain will still be in place until we have trained our minds and bodies in tolerance and understanding. This will come in time through our meditative practice. In the beginning of a recovery, we will have to acknowledge that our intentions are often unwise and based in old patterns of craving pleasure and avoiding pain. We may never get completely free from these instinctual drive-based feelings and intentions. We will, however, become more and more skilled at not taking them personally or acting from the unwise intentions of greed or hatred. Instead, we respond wisely. The second level of intention goes beyond simply responding wisely to negative thoughts. Here we begin to intentionally cultivate positive thoughts. Thoughts of loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, generosity, patience, tolerance, mercy, and forgiveness. We attempt to use our mental faculties to think about, to consider, to reason, to reflect, and to apply spiritual principles. We intentionally train our minds to think thoughts that are focused on spiritual matters rather than material ones. This second or higher level of thought is the proper use of intentional thinking. Most of the time, our minds are preoccupied with how to get our next fix, or at least how to avoid pain or failure. On this highest level of spiritual thought, we intentionally think about generosity and compassion. We ask ourselves, how can I help? Or what is the kind thing to do in this circumstance? Or how can I best express my appreciation and gratitude? And when someone offends us, we turn the mind towards compassion, acknowledging the pain, and then thinking about what it must be like to be in the mind state of the person who has offended us. We remain mindful and vigilant about what is going on in our minds. What are we thinking? What are our intentions? And that is a lifesaver right there. The first level of intention involves practicing non-harming. It is simple damage control. But this damage control is key in the recovery process. For addicts to maintain abstinence and continue to recover, they will have to align their core conscious motivations with non-harming. Although this may take some time and constant vigilance, eventually it will become more and more natural. All who strive to have more positive intentions and actions report an increased level of happiness, contentment, and well-being. When we are happy, we are more likely to maintain recovery. That's why it's so important, guys. The second level involves intentionally using our minds to break free from suffering and dissatisfaction. In this higher aspect of intention, we use our minds. We, in fact, train our minds in the practice of meditation, reflecting on impertinence and on how addiction and grasping create suffering. So part of our intentional practice is to overcome identification with negative thoughts and through renunciation. When we let go of or renounce ill will and the satisfying of craving, we cut off suffering at its root cause. Renunciation is not about pushing something away. It's about letting go. It's facing the fact that certain things cause us pain, and they cause other people pain. As addicts, we know this better than most. Renunciation is a commitment to let go of the things that create suffering. It is founded on the intention to stop hurting ourselves and others. For example, when we realize that our craving for pleasure and hatred of pain has become an addiction to drugs and alcohol, we renounce all forms of participation in intoxication. By letting go of drugs and booze, we are left with the raw emotions and fears that have been fueling the addictions. But facing the aversion to the fear of those emotions and the craving for the insensibility of intoxication, we become to understand that the craving and addictions were mostly in our minds, and that we have the ability to choose one moment at a time not to run away from pain by drowning it in false pleasure. Eventually, it becomes clear that, as the Buddha taught, pain is not the enemy, but just another given aspect of life. When we accept the inevitability, inevitably, you know what word I'm trying to say, of unpleasant experience, we become, it's when you're just like, it's going to happen eventually, on and off, like an ocean, like the tides of an ocean. So just accept it. When we accept it, that's what inevitability, I can't say that word, of unpleasant experiences, we become willing to tolerate pain and establish a more constructive relationship to pain. In this case, in this sense, pain can be seen as being similar to fire. Fire is a natural and useful thing. It heats our homes and cooks our food, but if handled inappropriately, it can also burn the house to the ground. Pain is also useful. It is part of our survival instinct. So if you're feeling pain, find the root cause and get it out of your life. It tells us when our bodies are in danger or hungry or cold. This works out okay when you can just turn on the AC and cool down, but the survival instinct also knows that too much pain will kill us. So it meets most unpleasant experiences with aversion, fear, and craving for them to go away. Okay, that's what I just said, so we'll see what comes next here. And when the pain we experience is emotional or chronic, out of control, the craving for it to go away begins to burn us, consuming us with hatred and resentment. Aversion to pain is a natural phenomenon, however, and if we have a wise relationship to the mind, it is not a problem at all. Thus, it is not about pushing these thoughts and feelings away or pretending we don't experience them. It's about training the mind to not let the fire burn us. That is renunciation. We have the choice to no longer stick our hands in the flames. Having a positive intention is a protection against relapse and a life of miserable addiction. We will eventually come to realize that acting out our hatred only causes more hatred. Picking up the burning ember of ill will to throw at our enemy burns us before it burns them. Likewise, when we pick up the substance or behavior that allows us to temporarily avoid the pain, we play with fire. I'll repeat that. Likewise, when we pick up the substance or behavior that allows us to temporarily avoid the pain, we play with fire. It may feel warm and fuzzy at first, but it will there's that word again, inevitably burn us to the core. Perhaps most important, we must relax and realize that recovery comes with time. What is true here and now is that we have finally found a secure and reliable refuge. We are now on the path, however gradual it may be, that will lead us to full recovery. Learning to cultivate the right intentions and thoughts is one of the most important aspects of our recovery. This perspective will unfold with practice. Simply thinking about it isn't enough. We must practice it. The redirection of our intention comes more alive when we develop the moral and ethical practice of non-harming that follow in the next factor of the path. Next factors of the path. With the gathering of the attention in the formal practice of mindful meditation. With the gathering of the attention is the formal practice of mindful meditation, or 7. Our mind gets concentrated, which is 8, and our awareness penetrates the truth of what is happening in the here and now. We directly experience and understand 1. The impertinent and the dissatisfactory nature of our negative thoughts, and we begin to see that they are not as personal as we thought. You'll remember that wisdom, the first level of the Eightfold Path, is composed of understanding and intention. So what is wisdom? Understanding and intention coupled together. It is said that trying to comprehend understanding, 1, and intention, 2, without ethical conduct, which is 3, 4, and 5, and the training of meditation, which is 7 and 8, the final 2 levels of the path is like trying to row a boat across a river without untying it from the dock. It is like trying to row upstream without any oars. Those who try will just get swept away by their addictive tendencies, confusion, ill will, and self-serving tendencies. Let's see, we're at 1453. We'll go through community here. We're in chapter 7, communication/community. We take refuge in the community as a place to practice wise communication and to support others on their path. We practice being honest, wise, and careful with our communications, asking for help from the community, allowing others to guide us through the process. We practice openness, honesty, and humility about the difficulties and successes we experience. So that's kind of like the mantra for this chapter. So I'm going to say it one more time. We take refuge in the community as a place to practice wise communication and to support others on their path. We practice being honest, wise, and careful with our communications, asking for help from the community, allowing others to guide us through the process. We practice openness, honesty, and humility about the difficulties and successes we experience. Community. A central and integral aspect of the recovery process is being involved in community. It is our hope that Refuge Recovery will provide that community for you. But if it doesn't, perhaps because there is not a program yet in your area, we implore you to find communities that can offer refuge. Many of our members have found great support in the 12-step communities and/or Buddhist communities while trying to build the support of a Refuge Recovery group. If a group doesn't exist in your area, we encourage you to start one. Having a community to practice with is important on several levels. As recovering addicts, we need like-minded people to guide us, to inspire us, to support us, and to challenge us when we get stuck. I want to repeat that. We need like-minded people to guide us, to inspire us, to support us, and to challenge us when we get stuck. The Buddha felt that community was so important that he included it in the traditional ritual of taking refuge, or committing to the path of freedom. Committing to that path, dedicating our life to recovering our Buddha nature, consists of committing to an awakening, which is Buddha, understanding the truth about reality, which is Dharma, and participating in community, which is Sangha. From the perspective of recovery, we need communities that include every type of recovering addict. Those with more time and experience become our mentors in what the Buddha refers to as spiritual relationships, guiding us on the path to recovery and inspiring and encourage us to do the hard work. The more wisdom and compassion those spiritual friends have, the more compassion and kindness they show us and others. In addition to helping us understand reality and respond with compassion, the wise beings who are our mentors urge us to continue on the path of recovery when it gets difficult and we feel like giving up. The support for abstinence and recovery in a world that conspires to keep us asleep is an invaluable aspect of any sincere desire to recover. I'm going to say that again. The support from abstinence and recovery in a world that conspires to keep us asleep is an invaluable aspect of any sincere desire to recover. The experienced member of the Refuge Recovery community can serve as mentors, challenging and supporting us in the places we get stuck. They can also act as sounding boards for newly recovering addicts as they work towards new insights and healing. Those members of the community with less experience in recovery can also be a valuable service. Those who are difficult can be our greatest teachers. Those who are difficult can be our greatest teachers. They help us see clearly where we are on the path. This is made clear to us through our ability to respond with understanding and friendliness to those who need us or who push our buttons. Difficult personalities are a mirror. Difficult personalities are a mirror for the places where we get stuck in judgment, fear, and confusion. Since the freedom we seek is a relational freedom, a state of awareness, skillful actions, and communication that is connected to and in relationship with others, Community allows us to put into practice wisdom and compassion towards all beings, even the people who might not necessarily gravitate towards naturally. I'm going to read that last sentence once again, because in the beginning of it is the key, right? Since the freedom to seek a relational freedom, since the freedom to seek is a relational freedom, a state of awareness, skillful actions, and communication that is connected to and in relationship with others. Community allows us to put into practice wisdom and compassion towards all beings, even the people we might not necessarily gravitate towards naturally. There you go. We're at 20 minutes, and we will continue on with communication on page 51 in the next video. Namaste.